Did you know that if you put away money now, your future self is going to really, really thank you? Hey guys, welcome back. Question of today for you is how much are you putting away from your after tax income for yourself for your future years? Well, many of us that are in our later stages of our lives, our 50s and 60s and 70s, are now realizing how important a thing that is and something that we not necessarily did back in our 20s and 30s. And I know a number of us are really regretting it now. So I hope some of you watching this video today are in your 20s or your early 30s because there's lots of time for you. And I want to go over a few scenarios. Stick around. So, those of you that have seen my videos before, you basically know the backstory of my wife and I and the journey we've been on. For those that are seeing one of my videos for the first time, I'll just give you a quick recap of where we are. A couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, basically, we were able to sell our house in the big city in Ontario, and we were able to get a very good sale price. It was right near the tail end of the crazy market that was going on. And we moved to rural Ontario, a little north, and we were able to get a fairly decent sized house, bigger house actually than we had in the city, but we were in the rural part of Ontario. But the nice part is we were able to get this house for basically half of what we sold for. That allowed us to basically clear all debt that we had and move into a new area completely clean of any debt other than your day to day living expenses. My wife was able to retire, and I maintained a position that I work at and continue to work at this to this day. And just for perspective, our goal this year in 2024 is to put approximately 40% of our after tax income into our TFSA. We're not maxed out on it, but doing that basically this year, we will be maxed out. And then we'll have to move to putting more money into RSPs. My wife doesn't have one. I have one that's fairly small. So there's lots of room in there for both of us. But what I would like to kind of get at today, though, is the importance of doing this sort of saving way back in our earlier years, which we both kind of did and then ended up using that money for other things throughout life. And while I can say we never ever lived beyond our means, we certainly lived better than we really needed to. And let me go over what I mean by that. Living beyond your means basically means that you have more debt than you have income, basically, that allows you to pay off that debt. And it's when you start going from using your line of credit to pay off your credit card back to your line of credit, et cetera, et cetera. And you never get ahead in the game, especially with interest rates when they rise or when they're high, like they are now. So in our earlier years, we never ever got into a situation where we were close like that. But we did come close to the line and always, or a lot of times, looked at taking the stance of, well, we can afford it, so let's do it. And probably did some things, had some great times, made some great memories, but did some things that we really didn't need to do because we had a lot of other things going on as well in our lives, kids, and maybe some better decisions is the best way to look at it. And what I'm getting at is, I said earlier, our goal this year is to look at putting roughly 40% of our after tax income into our TFSAs and invest, hoping to get great returns. And I realize that the younger generations right now, the folks that are in their 20s and their 30s, even late teens, you're not likely able to do that unless you have a fairly decent paying job or potentially still live at home, which is great. Do that as long as you can, if I can give you some advice. But most people are not in a position that they're able to put away 40% of their income. But what I want to get at today is if you start with anything, it's so much better than nothing. And especially given the amount of time that you have. And what I did to kind of show or demonstrate this, and you can do this as well, we all have access to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is a great thing for all kinds of different knowledge that you need. But if you will go into ChatGPT and just play around with some numbers and give it some information, it will give you back results that are sometimes quite eye opening. As an example, I used just a very generic setup where I would put away $50 a month every month for 20 years. And then I also did the same scenario for 30 years. So basically $600 a year put in monthly. And I said that I wanted it to assume that I got a 5% dividend from a stock or an ETF that I'm into that paid me quarterly. That dividend was then reinvested into the stock. And I also assumed a 5% increase in the dividend every year and a 5% increase in the value of the actual stock every year. So basically 5% across the board. And what that showed me is $50 a month turned into, after 20 years, turned into $18,011.41. After 30 years, it turned into $35,924.37. And that's $50. So think about your life today. I know for those that are renting, rent is crazy. I know that for those that might have a mortgage, mortgage expenses are deep. Mortgage rates are high. Well, depending on when you got the mortgage, but $50. Most of us that are working can come up with $50. Maybe it's a one less latte. Um, every day. Maybe it's one less dinner out over the course of the entire month. And I think most of us would agree we could come up with $50. And my point is, with doing that, that investment of $50 turns into 18,000 or 35,000 basically over the course of that investment. And things change throughout our lives. Of course, there's always the possibilities of losing positions, but for the most part, those of us that stay gainfully employed, there are job raises. There are other sources of income that might come in down the road. Maybe you have a side gig or whatever. So that 50 could even turn into 75 or 100 a month, depending on what you make the sacrifices of and what you decide to do with those choices that you have. Now, a couple of things with those scenarios as well. Number one, that was 5% across the board and a consistent 5%. And I kind of use that because in today's market, that's really not accurate. A lot of people get quite upset if they don't make 8 to 10% because, 5% I can typically get at a TFSA today. But there's also good years and bad years in the market. So there's going to be those times where you're going to potentially lose 10 or 15%. And there'll be those times when you might make 30 or 35%. So I thought 5% is a general decent amount to put in there. So this could be way, way more, or it could even be a little bit less. Point is, you don't want to get to the point of your life where I am, for instance, in your mid 50s, and start realizing, boy, oh boy, I've missed all that time. And now I really got to throw 40% to be able to try and hopefully hit those gains that I want to get for my retirement. The other thing to note as well, as I said, it was only $50. Could be $100. Maybe you're in a position you could put $150 or $200 a month. Great for you. We used to refer to that as pay yourself first. So every time you get a paycheck from your place of employment, you pay yourself first by putting money away. The rest of it then you use for obviously your rent, your mortgage payment, your food, your utilities. I think most of us, though, hopefully most of us have a little bit of what you call mad money. That mad money drops a bit, or the fun money, it drops a little bit. And that's where you pay yourself first before everything else. So that's going to wrap up today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. As I say, pay yourself first, pay yourself just a little bit, and be consistent. Your future self will certainly thank you. If you've enjoyed this video or any of the videos on my site, I would please ask you to consider hitting that Marksy's Place button below and subscribe to this channel. You get notified every time I come out with a new video. I do bring out videos weekly, and I thank you for sticking around. Until next time, take care, and we'll talk to you soon.